Hi, I'm Scott Campbell with Solve 3D.
And I'm Brad Ashley. Welcome back for video 5. This video we're going to go through using the engine workflow for many of these tools.
Yeah, so Brad, this is in the viewer, which is great because I get to see everything as I'm working on it, but this also appears in the workflow. Why would I want to use these tools in the workflow?
Yeah, so some of the reasons that you might want to use this instead of the viewer is the ability to update a previously trained model. So if you've trained a model, for example, on how to find vehicles, and you now want to do also the parking, you could use this to update that previously trained model. Second, if you had a large batch of tiles that you want to identify on, maybe too large to be brought into the viewer, or it takes a long time to bring into the viewer, you could just attach and use the full file of tiles here in the workflow side. Third, there's the conversion of many 3DL files. So if you have several files that you want to export out to DXF, it's a really easy way to do it. One other reason that I would add is if you want to run it through a command line, you can do that in the background using the command line option.
Okay, so that all makes sense to me. Basically, if I've got a lot of work to do, and I can go ahead and do it, or if I want to update a train model, which I should say is only for experts only. So how do I use it then? Take me through how I use each of these.
Yeah, so back in the engine workflow side of things, under Object Classification module, there are now 3 new tools: the Image Training, Image Labeled to DXF, and Image Classification. So we'll walk through how to use each of the 3 of them. Starting with the Image Training, you load that tool into the operation. The first option here is the Input folder, and this is where you're inputting the image that you're going to use for the training. It needs to be a set of tiles that you've used for the training purposes. Next is if you have that pre-trained model. Back in the viewer, you've already trained a model, maybe for just finding vehicles, and now you want to add those parking spaces, and you want to make that into one model with multiple classes. This is where you could do that. The third input is where you would pick those training labels. You'd have to do this side in the viewer. You have to pick those, identify those items of interest like we did with the cars and the parking in the previous videos. But that's where you would then pick those training, the 3DL file. Next, you put in the training parameters, how many iterations you'd like to run it on, the name of the model that you'd like the output to be. And then the final piece here is whether or not your computer that you're using has a GPU. If it has a GPU, then you want to set this run on CPU as false. And if it doesn't, then you'd want to set it to true. I will note that it does take a bit longer to run when it's on a CPU versus a GPU. If you look in our documentation, you'll see recommendations on. The final input here is setting where you want the resulting training model to go, and that's just your output file. Once you've done that, you hit execute, and you can see that we've got the command line option here. It tells you all of the inputs for that command line. And then you just simply hit execute workflow, and it runs. The end result will be that trained model, similar to what we got out of the viewer side. Next, we'll look at the image classification tool. So similar to the training, there are a few inputs. The input folder here is the images that you want to train on. So like I said in the reasons why, if you had a number of large tiles that you wanted to work with, you might want to run it from this side instead of through the viewer. Next, you're picking what the model is that you're going to use. That's the results from that last tool, the image training model. Last are the training annotations that you made. And then you input the classification score again. And finally, the run on GPU versus CPU, the same as with the image training. And set the output of where you'd like that classification to go. This is going to be those polygons that are resulting out of this classification. And that's the results of this tool. The very final tool that we'll look at is the image labels to DXF. So that's taking the results that we just created out of the image classification. So the input is those results, the 3DL file. And then the export would be the DXF file. So wherever you'd like that DXF to go and whatever you're naming it. And that'll run and create the DXF of those results. And those are the three tools that are here in the object classification module for imagery. The one that's different is that ability to create those labels, and so you need to do that back in the viewer.
Okay, thanks for that, Brad. It looks like it's pretty similar to using it in live view with a few exceptions. So I'd say the key points for this section is, as with the other one, you got to pay attention to your classification score, and you may have to play with it to make sure you get the results that you're looking for. If you find that even on the GPU setting, things are still going a little bit slow, see our documentation about what can help you. Most notably, adding more GPU processing power almost always will help, but there are some other things that you can do. And finally, I have to note that if you're going to update a previously trained model, you should only do so if you're really familiar with deep learning and what can adversely and positively affect that trained model. What's up next after this?
Yeah, so we're on to our final video next, and that's going to be our tips and tricks.
Okay, great. We'll see you in the next video.